I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup Studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, Season 3, recorded on May 11th, 2017. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths themes, one theme at a time, and today's theme is competition. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room available for you right below the main video window. If you're watching on the video, just look down there, and there's a chat room that's down there. Bottom left-hand corner is the login button. Choose that. Choose the guest account. Put your name in where it says guest and hit submit. Super easy to get in. Don't create a Chatwing account. You don't need one of those. Just jump in. We've got 13 or so in the chat room this morning, and we'd love to have you join us out there as well. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can contact us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com, for all your CliftonStrengths coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video on both streaming and downloadable audio. Many of you are now just subscribing to these webcasts on your phone. You can listen to them on a car, on a train, and a plane. Wherever you're going, recapture that time that you normally would be traveling. You can be listening to us on the road. Micah and I get a lot of great comments back from you, and we love to get those, so keep sending them to us. But if you want to get the information on how to do that, it's on our coaches blog. Go to coaching.gallup.com. Micah Librant is our host today. She works as a workplace consultant here at Gallup. I wish on the riverfront with me. Maybe someday we'll get her back here in Omaha. Micah, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Always good to have you. And of course, today we are talking about competition. Hopefully everyone has downloaded the companion guide. If you're listening to the recorded version, just pause, go back, get the companion guide. It's available on the coach's blog under the Theme Thursday tab. Download that, print out, and we'll have some great stuff for you on that. But Micah, as we talk about competition, what do we want to say about that today?
So it is in that influencing domain. In fact, I have my handy dandy bookmark to help us see where we are. We made it through all the executing themes, and we're on the fourth theme in influencing. I counted. We have about 22 themes to go yet in season 4. Pretty exciting. And I find that the more I get to talk about each season 3, we're in season 3. Yep. Competition. I got ahead of myself. I find that with each of these influencing themes, the influencing category of leadership itself just makes even more sense. It becomes even more crystal clear. So I'm hoping that we can give you a great illustration of competition today that will help really solidify what you love about it and what we can do for it specifically in a leadership role. Let's just talk about what competition is. If you downloaded that companion guide, you know you've got the full paragraph definition. And I just wanted to pull a few pieces out of that really resonated with me. I think helps us understand competition on a deeper level. Really, the essence of competition is about comparison. It's about not just wanting to beat your own best time, but looking left and right and wanting to be the best compared to other people. So folks with high competition tend to instinctively look for what can be counted, ranked, measured, or sorted. And they don't. One of the sentences I really love in this paragraph is, you don't compete for the fun of competing. You compete to win. And I think that helps us see the seriousness and the value in competition. It's not just that I really like games. It's that I live for the victory of that game. And I think it can be a fantastic theme to serve groups of people. I coach a lot of executive teams and a lot of people who sit in a position where they try to strategize and try to think about how are you going to affect the success of an entire organization. And very often it can get easy to get stuck navel gazing and looking at our own metrics, looking at how are we performing. What I find really stretches groups like that, or really any sort of leadership group, is somebody who can say, let's not just get impressed with ourselves, but let's pay close attention to what other people in our industry are doing, or even more creatively, what other people who others might think have nothing to do with us are doing. Competition is that essence of being able to benchmark against something else. And it's not just, again, coming back to the idea of it's not the joy of competing. The quote that it came to mind, and I had to look it up to make sure I had it right, when I think about competition, is close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Competition isn't about trying really hard and learning something when you try. Let go of that. That's not what somebody with high competition is going to get excited about. It's about winning, and it's about not necessarily. Think about sometimes competition gets compared with achiever, whereas achiever is about the effort that it takes to complete, and the excitement is in putting in a lot of elbow grease and a lot of hard work. With competition, it can take a little bit of work or it can take a lot of work. It's not done until you've won. So let's think about, what does that look like as a leader? As an individual contributor, competition might be I'm outpacing everyone else. As a leader, it can be we are ahead of the competition. So it's paying attention not just to how you are doing, not just to how your team is doing, but how that compares to others. And I think that brings an essence of relevance that is often missed. It's how leaders can stay ahead of the curve. It's how they can stay in tune with their clients and their customers. And it's how they can set meaningful benchmarks for their team that bring a lot of clarity toward forward progress. I think that oftentimes there is a negative connotation with people with high competition. If you were Googling quotes about competition, most of the stuff that comes up is about letting go of competition or about tapping that down and realizing that the swimmer in your lane is the one that matters, or the competition that's most important is with yourself, which honestly, I think just comes about because there's more of us in the world who have high achiever than there is people who have high competition. It's not super common. Last I checked, it was about number 26 out of 34 in terms of frequency of how often it fits in people's top 5. And so I think we need to dive into loving that competition and accepting the power and partnership that can happen when you've got somebody who says, no, it matters how other people are doing and it matters that we're the best. So because of that, I find that people struggle sometimes, even coaches struggle when they are coaching managers with high competition. For some reason, there tends to be that little bit of a mental block that you couldn't be an excellent developer of people if you have high competition. And I can't wait for you to meet Eric, our guest today, because I think he's going to blow that notion away. But I'd also like you to think about the developmental nature of noticing heroes and noticing champions. People with high competition are paying attention to winning. They're paying attention to what works. They're paying attention to who's the very best. And they're doing it not just sort of up and down, they're doing it left and right as well. So they're constantly scanning their team, scanning the competition and looking for, gosh, who's the very best and how can I be a part of that? I imagine that to be a fantastic mentorship tool. If you can notice the folks on your team, typically those people with high competition notice talent in others and they do it in quantifiable ways, often in times that other people haven't even seen it themselves. So you're not going to be the type of coach who sits on the sidelines with high competition. You're going to be more of a baseball style. You're going to wear the uniform. You're going to stand on that baseline with people. I think it changes when you've got competition versus maybe some say developer, but it certainly can be a fantastic talent as a manager. I think what competition in a leader brings is paying attention to celebration, not taking celebration lightly, because you're paying attention to and feeling the catharsis of victory. It means that you can be fantastic at recognizing people. I think that competition does need a challenge, something to grow, something to improve, and someone to compare to. So you can think about that on a group level. You can think about that on an individual level. One way to think about investing in competition talent as a leader is just to make sure you're paying attention to higher and better performers. Who is constantly helping you push that envelope, and how can you measure yourself against them? The final thing that I've got before I introduce our guest, Eric, today is we want to talk about the 4 needs of followers: trust, compassion, stability, and hope, specific to what does competition have to offer to these 4 needs. The first one I'll talk about is trust. I think about any leader can build great trust by just increasing their self-awareness and helping others learn about themselves as well. That sort of transparency and authenticity is more important, I think, now than it ever has been. So I would talk with competition. I would ask a leader, how do you communicate your passion for winning? And where can you express the cost of a loss? People with high competition take winning and losing in their soul. I mean, they feel it in their spine. So you need that safe place where people can know that this isn't just a game, but that this is really something that at your, in your belly is important to you. So lean into that, find great ways to help people, to help share that joy. Remember, it's an influencing theme. You can help other people feel that same sort of joy as well. And also think about, how do you handle yourself when you don't win? And how can you make sure that you've got some safe places where people can either give you some space or help you through it. A leader with competition could show compassion, I think, by understanding how do I tailor my competition to the very best place possible, and also how do I use this to develop other people. So a question you might ask is, who is competing with you? And how can you push each other farther? Oftentimes, you'll find that people with high competition notice other competitors. They know who else the game matters to, and you can build some really great relationships there. I think I'm at a loss when I think about sports analogies, but I'm sure if you wanted to look up sports competitors who ended up being great friends, there's stories all over. So it's about thinking about, how do you connect with those folks who are also in the game with you, and how can you make each other better? Around stability, I think about it again as that developmental nature. What does your bench strength look like? So how can you talk about what your team has to offer now and what they have to offer in the future? Who are you thinking about mentoring? Are you going to have the right people in the right place, and why? Again, tapping into the fact that you pay attention to what works. You pay attention to heroes and champions. So also think about, what is your team constantly improving upon? What are people getting better at? You probably notice some of these potential talents in others before even they do. So really bringing that out and realizing that's something other people don't see, a fantastic way to build stability. And finally, on hope, I think it's important to ask leaders, what are the measures to beat inside and outside of your organization? And how can you illustrate those and make them crystal clear to folks? Remember, hope is the belief that tomorrow is going to be better than today, and that you have the ability to make it so. So your natural inclination to measure things and to see the progress can be the best tool that you have in order to help other people see how tomorrow is going to be better. Hope that gives you a great sort of picture of what competition looks like, so that we're all on the same page and truly speaking the same language as coaches when we think about competition. The best part of the program is coming up next. So I want to introduce you to Eric Gillis. Eric was one of the first cohorts to go through the Gallup MBA program, and he's joining us live today from his home office. Eric, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Micah. It's good to be with you today.
Hey, Eric, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What are your top 5, and how did you come to know about strengths?
You know, I when I was early on in my career, I worked for Marriott Hotels and Resorts, and Gallup was one of our main behavioral consultants, and so all of the employees at Marriott took the Strengths Finder. We also were really engaged with the Q12. And I was a certified strengths coach through with Marriott. And so I became deeply passionate about it, because I was able to see from a leadership standpoint how it could help me as a leader understand the people that I was leading. And so at that time, the Gallup MBA program was introduced, and I was already looking to go to back to school, and thought that this was the perfect opportunity for me because of the belief I had in Gallup, as well as pursuing my education. So I did that, and that was just a further opportunity and experience to really broaden my understanding of strengths, and I've been able to use it throughout my career. The individuals that I have been able to interact with have been, lifelong friends, and now, I even use it with my family, and so I have 4 kids as well, and being able to understand them and their strengths has been helpful. So obviously competition is high in my top 5. I believe, just like Jim and Micah, I have positivity and woo and so these have been, really have been able to help me not only in business but in life in general. So
Excellent. Great to have you. Tell us a little bit about what your role is now and where you see competition coming into that role.
So it's funny that we're talking about competition now and in my role, because this is a fairly new role for me. I switched organizations in February, and I don't do that very often in my career. It's only happened twice, and where I've switched, and so currently right now I work for a company called Care Trust REIT, which we are a real estate investment trust, and so we invest in senior housing, so anywhere from skilled nursing to assisted living and independent living, we invest in that. So we have 17 different operators that run the facilities for us, and I head up the asset management side of our company. So I get the pleasure of working with our operators and going in and helping the CEOs and the operations directors and VPs to really maximize their abilities in the buildings, and making sure that obviously from our perspective we're taking care of our assets and they're being successful. So competition for me is really being able to help them win. I look at the marketplace that they are in and where they stand to their competitors, and how am I helping in that space, and how can I help them become better. Oftentimes I go in when they're struggling, and because I've been an operator my previous life, before this I was an operator and was able to run healthcare facilities, and so I come in and help them with strategies and being able to help them win. It's interesting with this role, Micah, because in my previous life I was able to compare myself to other people within my organization, and those were always the people that I compared myself to. But in this role, I am the only one that has this role in my organization. So within the first couple weeks of my time at this organization, I went and I looked out into the marketplace and I said, who is the best person at another company that is the leader in asset management for REITs? And I found out who that person was, and I studied her, and I looked at her background. I looked at her education, what she did. I looked at everything she does for her company now, what her metrics were in that organization, and I'm gunning for her. So that's where I find a lot of my competition. I even go on to their, this might sound like stalking, but I go on to their earnings calls, and I look at her script and what she's saying and how she's doing and everything around that. So when you talk about comparison earlier on, that's who I'm comparing myself to right now. And I'm, that competitive theme comes out often.
So your top 5 are maximizer, activator, belief, competition, and positivity.
Yeah.
None of those are strategic thinking themes, but it sure sounds like you're strategizing real hard.
Well, I think it's the competitive theme that comes out to be able to strategize how to win. I had a great Gallup coach when I was going through my MBA program, Jackie Merritt, and she really truly helped me understand competitiveness, because a lot about what I do is I would analyze numbers, and I don't have analytical or anything like that anywhere near my top 10. And she says, but Eric, that's how you compete, is you're analyzing these statistics, these measurements, and everything you do is about comparing your stats and your measurements to other people that have those. And so I analyze those measurements and I strategize on how to get there. Because again, like you said earlier, it's about not just competing, but it's about winning and making sure that you put yourself in a position that you can win. If I go into something and I don't feel like I can win, it doesn't interest me as much. And so at times you really have to strategize on how you're going to compete. When I took this new role, a large part of the interview is what were my measurements? How am I going to be measured? What are you going to measure me by, and what does that look like? Because I have to have that to be able to feel like I'm successful. And so I think that competitive theme really drives the strategy, because we strategize to win.
I love what you said about, if you don't feel like you can win, you're not quite as interested in it. What's that process like of sorting whether you can win or not?
That's a great question. I actually, that's one of the reasons why I made a switch in one of my roles, is because I was put into a situation and in a position where I didn't feel like I could win. And I look at a competition not in a time frame of short distances, so to say. I look at it from the long haul of how this could take several years to win, but if there's a plan to get there to win, I'm going to go for it. I went into that competition feeling pretty confident that I could win, and then a couple years into it, I just found that every situation I turned to, I could find that I wasn't going to win. And in fact, I felt like I was losing. And that was really hard for me to cope with. And because I don't necessarily feel like I had outlets of coping with losing. And so it was a very difficult time in my career. And I don't lose often, and so when you do, it's hard to be able to go through that process. But I did learn a lot from it, and the way that I look at that is that I've learned on how to be a better competitor to win in the future. So yeah, so when you compete, going in that there are winners and there are losers, and sometimes you're going to end up on the wrong side and be that loser.
Eric, this may tie into what you're talking about there. Dave asked from the chat room, how do you balance the need to compare and win with the benefits of differentiating yourself in your firm? So balancing this comparison. There's some maximizer too. We're having some conversation. Harry was talking a little bit about that maximizer competition pairing that you have in there. So how do you balance that in the work that you do?
So that's a great question, Harry. I think that the balance comes in understanding that this is a long road at times, and that I think early on in my career I wanted the quick wins, and I wanted, if I couldn't have a fast result, then it wasn't very interesting. And then I realized as my career developed that sometimes it's going to take a while. I think in the role that I have now, this is where I've had to balance it out the most, because it's not as a direct competition that I've had in the past, where I know exactly who my competitors are. I know exactly what those measurements are, and I look at them daily, and I know and I know where I stand daily. This is a different role for me, to where I have to have more balance in that, because I'm helping others compete and I'm helping others win, and that's where I find my satisfaction in now is helping others win, and that's where I find my competition. So there is more of a balanced approach, and sometimes it's difficult because when you're trying to influence others and helping them win, there's patience, because sometimes you want to just go in there and do it for them, because you see the path is better this way. But so you have to balance that out. And I can't say that I'm doing an extremely good job at that, but I'm learning, and that's a new phase in my leadership right now, is understanding how to do that balancing. So maybe in 6 months I can give a better response to that, because it's something that I'm really having to learn and understand right now.
You know what I noticed that I want to pull out is it's not an either or. It's not that you're competing on your own or you're focusing on your team's winning. You're also investing in how do you catch the best in the industry. And that it sounds like it's in a way that isn't interfering with you helping other people win. It's just a different sort of activity or a different competition.
Sure. Yeah.
What happens when you're the best? So when you do, get better than the other asset manager who you're targeting and who you're gunning for, do you tend to get as much joy out of maintaining that number one spot, or are you looking for something else?
That's funny. I think part of the excitement that I have in this role is that my organization has invested a lot into me to teach me other parts of the business as well. And so that there's a lot for me to go out there and understand and compete and win with. Micah, I think that when I get to the top, and it's not if, right? It's when. I think that where I find a lot of passion is helping others win with me, and that's important to me as well. Developers is really towards the top of my strengths, and as also and so seeing other people win and being able to develop even people outside of my organization and helping them. I like that. I find joy and satisfaction. But like you said earlier, I can spot them a mile away, other competitors and other people. Oftentimes I will reach out to them and tell them that I've started a competition with them and they didn't even know it. It's kind of like you go on the basketball court and say, let's play one-on-one. And I have found I have created some really great relationships with people that I have reached out to and said, hey, look, I know you're pretty good at what you do. You're number one in the company, but game on, let's go. And we've been able to create some pretty cool and interesting relationships that have lasted a long time.
Eric, I hear a lot of your belief and positivity influencing your competition from helping other people, right? I mean, I think when we think about where does that come from, because I've heard you say that a couple times in the conversations, I want to help other people win. And I have that maximizer positivity combo as well in there that I think play into that. Sometimes we put this competition by itself and we say, oh, it's always about winning. And you've said, and I think you can talk a little bit about this, but you have to have a set of values that drive that that winning for others or helping others win type deal. Is there a value when you think about, what do you hold? What kind of values still hold that kind of drive you to this helping others win?
So Jim, I think that my last role. So when I was with Marriott, I was leading salespeople, marketing people, and it was scoreboard all day long. It was very easy. I would seek after people that were competitors. That's who I was going after because I knew that they wanted to win, and it was very, very easy to know where we're going. So then I move over to healthcare, and now I'm leading nurses and I'm leading therapists and I'm leading social workers who not a lot of them have competitor in their DNA. They're more around belief and they're more around that value structure. And so there was, I feel like in my leadership there, that's where my belief really came in, is helping other people understand the value structure of why we want to be the best, because we want to give the best care, because we want to be able to take care of individuals and really give them the greatest experience that they can have in healthcare. And so I was able to rally physical therapists, and I will say though, physical therapists are competitors. Those are the ones in healthcare that really are the competitors. If you take physical therapists against speech therapists, now those are two totally different people. And so it was difficult to, sometimes there was some competition where the other people didn't want to compete. But so it was interesting. I was dealing with a different set of people. And I really feel like that's where my belief came in to competition is we were able to compete with our beliefs and our value structure. And that was a complete shift in who I was when I was dealing with just salespeople and just marketing people, where it was definitely more of a scoreboard type of atmosphere.
I hear a lot of stability in there when you think about these needs of the follower. What you just talked about is leading in a way, using competition, leading in a way, helping them to understand, hey guys, we want to take you to this place. I want to get you to a place where you're winning. But that winning provides stability in the organization, right? I mean, everybody, when everybody's producing and everything is working, that provides an enormous amount of stability to an organization. And so kudos to you for really seeing that, whether you thought about it that way or not. It's amazing to kind of hear that play out in words, and as a leader provide that stability.
It's interesting, Jim, the last role that I had for the last 3 years, we started a new brand within our organization in a new community. And so we were brand new. Nobody knew who we were. We built new healthcare facilities. And so I think a lot of it was trying to paint a picture, a vision of what we were going to become. So, there was a lot of building those core values. But in my mind, it was all about, I knew exactly who the top person was, the top company was in our marketplace, and we were going after them. I mean, it was all about, we are going to take this market over. But I to build that, you had to use a lot of that visioning and create that belief structure. But don't get me wrong, that was all a part about, in the end, for me, it was the competition of winning and being the best in that marketplace.
Well, and that in a new marketplace, it's very unsure, right? And you have have employees who are like, "Hey, we've never done this before. We are the underdogs. We're going after, market share from that standpoint." And so it's a very unsure place. And in our leadership roles, I think oftentimes that competition can be used because everybody loves to have that vision, that focus, that something to go after. And a leader using their competition, and I think in some ways your belief plays into this again as well, that when you say it, you mean it. And that tone comes across in your leadership. So I think that's a great example of, in leadership, being able to provide stability and trust to those followers by really painting a picture of success before you get there, right?
So, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Micah, Harry has been asking a couple times about maximizer in competition. You have that both, Eric. You have both of those, and we know maximizer is kind of sorting. And we were talking in pre-show. I actually use maximizer in my own themes like competition. Competition's way down for me, and I get asked that question all the time. Do you have competition? Because I'm constantly, for me, when I compete against myself, which is really what it is all the time. I'm constantly, you probably are that too. It's always like, can I do it 1 minute faster? Yeah. Can I do 5 more push-ups? Can I run 3 more miles? Right? I'm doing that all the time. For you, and especially as a leader, how does maximizer and competition work in concert, with one sorting and one winning?
It's funny. I think in my last role, those two really had to be paired together, because when you're organized, when you're starting a new organization, there was a lot of maximizer in that. It was all about organizing ourselves to be able to compete. I think a lot of that, Jim, was also based around metrics and building those metrics and organizing it to where people knew where they stood also. In building a new organization, you have all these individuals coming on board, and oftentimes I feel like leaders aren't able to create the measurements to know when a person is doing well. And so I think that there was a lot of that maximizer theme playing with the competition, because in the end, I wanted to compete. We wanted to be number one, but to be able to do that, we had to organize ourselves. We had to take every department, every facility that we built, that had to really be done efficiently to be able to compete. And so I think that those two played in concert really well with one another to set the playing field. I remember several times, especially with our marketing and sales department early on, we had some difficulties in really establishing what our metrics and what our measurements were going to be, because it changed. There was different phases in building that organization. And so we had to change that often. And I think sometimes we learned a lot because we were mixing our messages of what that was. And so I was really leaning on that maximizer strength to get us there. But yeah, I think those two play really well together. I think that like you said, Jim, maximizer can also come off very competitive as well. It can lead that.
They're both so similar. There's downstairs in my refrigerator lately, my son's really into the string cheese that has two different colors and they're wrapped around each other like a rope. That is how that competition and maximizer seem within you, Eric. You can only extract them if you peel real hard.
That's a good visual.
They're both about sorting. If I notice in the chat room, people are sort of like, okay, what's the difference? I think about competition is probably what drives you to have more external sorting versus maximizers more internal. You could have maximizer and no competition and just be really picky about doing only the very best and then making it better. And maybe you might never stop. I have a feeling that the competition works as a great governor of your maximizer because you're paying attention to other people. You know when you're the best, you know when you've won, and you can keep going. You can move on to something else. Whereas without competition, maximizer could always see a way that it could be better and just continue to polish the pearl. Same being said, if you took maximizer out, if you peeled that away and had only competition, I think you probably might be a little less selective about where you compete. Or you probably for you hinge on your belief of, what's the competitions that most align with my values. Maximizer is, I think we lump a lot of the different themes and we call them maximizer because it's a sexy word, but really maximizer.
Leaders want to be maximizers,
don't they? Don't they? I mean, I don't want to be a minimizer. Maximizer is at its core just about how do I focus on what's already working and make it a lot better.
Mikey, what's interesting too is I think that positivity theme, what helps with that is also the part of celebration. Because if you don't have that, sometimes, like you said, there isn't an end. There's never an end to it. I think with competition, one of the things that when you win, you like to celebrate, and it's all about celebrating with individuals that we've accomplished something. That look, we set out to do something. And look, we accomplished that. So now let's take the opportunity to celebrate, and not just. I don't think gloating is the right word for it. It's truly celebrating with the team that you did that with, and recognizing those individuals that helped you get there. I think where competition can kind of get a bad rap is when an individual thinks that it's all about me and I was the one that did it. But in reality, you have to, and I think this is where hope and trust comes in from a leadership perspective, is recognize those individuals that helped in that process to get you there, and really celebrate when you do get there. Celebration is really a key piece of that, and not only celebrating, but knowing how to celebrate also. I remember a time when it was early on in the strengths world, and I was a new manager at Marriott, and I was, obviously strong in competition, and we had won at something, and actually one of my team members that was a part of it, she got the highest award, or she accomplished the most. And so here we were in this big setting. It was a big award setting, and I was going to be that individual that celebrated for her, and I brought her up on stage in front of everybody and gave her this big award, and I was thinking that, whoa, she's gonna love this because she won. This is exciting. This is awesome. Well, she didn't have that in her, and actually it was a disaster, and she hated it, and it was something that was totally non-motivational for her, and that's where I think I really understood that when we do celebrate, we also have to understand the group around us on how they like to celebrate as well, because there can be times where you think and it totally backfires, and celebration can become a demotivator instead of motivating.
It's an excellent example of how you've invested in and understood your competition a little bit better. Can you think of other things that you know now about your competition that make you a better leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I think self-awareness, in that I think at times I've come off really too strong, in that competition, especially when other people don't have that competitive theme and don't necessarily want to engage in that competition with you. It can come off a little braggadocious or a little arrogant, a little cocky. And so I think I've been able to understand, because with competitive, you can really see who has that theme also, and who's going to want to engage with you. So I think that self-awareness of the situation you're in, and who wants to compete, who doesn't, and coming off a little too strong. I think that has, for me, I've there's been disastrous situations where I really didn't handle it well, and now learning from those, I learn when I can engage and kind of be a little bit more upfront with people that, hey, let's compete, let's go. And those that aren't necessarily wanting that. But knowing that I'm still going after it, and I'm still going after that individual, because I know that they are winning. So I think self-awareness has been a big part of learning over the years with that competitive theme.
I'm getting so much clarity, and I feel like competition brings perseverance that other people don't have.
Stamina? Would you use that word too, Micah?
Maybe. Gosh, it just sounds like if you know you're still in the race and there's still points to be scored, you don't quit. Is that true? Or maybe there's also sort of a selectiveness of, if I know I can still win, I'm not going to quit.
So do you remember that movie? I think it was with Jim Carrey, that he said, so you're telling me I've got a shot. You tell me that I've got a chance.
You're saying there's a chance.
You're saying there's a chance.
About 1 in a million.
But there's still a chance. So I think so. I mean, I think that, we're going to look at, I say we, competitors, I mean, we're going to look at every opportunity and every angle. And that's where that strategy, I think, comes in. We're going to look at every angle on how we can win. And we're not going to give up until we see that we've gone down every avenue and looked at every corner and everything. And then when I know that I'm up against a corner and there's no way out, that's when I feel like I've lost, and I'm disengaging from the competition. And that doesn't happen very often. And in my career, that, there was a big loss, and that happened once, and it was difficult to handle, but I was in it for a while. I mean, I went at it and I went at it and I went at it until I felt like I just couldn't any longer. And then I finally kind of threw in the white towel and said, it's over. And that was hard. That's hard to say that, look, you lost.
Eric, as a leader, certainly when we think about developing those with competition, it's easy to look at your own life, and it's easy to say, well, give them sales goals. Okay, that's kind of cheating. As you think about how, when you were younger and developing your competition, and then the folks that you've worked with who have had high competition, but it needs to mature, right? We all need to exercise these things. Can you give us a little bit of advice on how do we approach this, and how do we train this in a way that makes them more mature and stronger and faster and those things?
I think in a competitive theme, I always did well with having a mentor and somebody that I could look to that was that really was at a different level than I was at that time. I had a really good leader early on that recognized that competitive theme in me, and really invested in me to say, hey, look, there's this individual that does it this way. Let's pair you up. Let's help you understand how they do it. And so I was able to look at that individual, and then they were I was on the West Coast, they were kind of on the East region, but he invested the time in flying me out there and getting to know who that person was and how they did those things, and how they were successful, and how they competed. And so that gave me somebody that I could look to, and it gave me kind of that bar to go to. So from then on, I was comparing myself to that individual. I would I would make those comparisons. I was always looking at their numbers. I was always looking at where they were going, and we didn't necessarily compete head to head because we were in different regions and different territories. But I always looked at them, and they helped me and took me kind of under their wings as well. So I think by doing that, but I think what's important also from a leadership perspective, somebody leading an individual with competitive theme, is always having that measurement for them. If they're in a role that doesn't have measurements and something to gauge their success, they're going to struggle. They will get bored, and they won't feel like that they're in a competition. And that's and you've got to be in tune to know that when they have had that measurement and they've reached it, you've got to place another one out there. There's got to be another competition you've got to put them in. And so if they're on a team where they're competing against each other and they've risen to the top, they're number one, well, who's that next person they're going after? There's got to be that another individual. So maybe it's competing with another organization, or maybe it's competing with another territory or another marketplace. So from a leadership perspective, you have to remember that people with competitive theme are always looking to compare themselves with somebody else. Like myself, that individual right now isn't necessarily in my organization. She is in a different organization, but that's who I'm comparing myself with now. And she's amazing. She's way away from where I am right now. And so I know that that's going to be a long journey for me. But she doesn't know it, but it's game on with her. So, so we're competing right now, but she doesn't necessarily know it.
I love that you took the initiative because you knew that was what that theme needed. Hey, I imagine that your other option could have been, oh gosh, I'm all alone, so I don't have anyone to compete with. So this is the wrong role for me. But that's just such a great example of how our themes don't tell us what we should do, but how we should go about doing it. And your mindfulness and your proactivity to say, I got to go find somebody to compete against. I think that's just such a great example of investing in talent. So, you need that for yourself. I'm going to just shamelessly ask for some free advice here because I'm married to someone with high competition. What do you feel like you need from the best partners that you've ever had? What's a great partnership that really fuels and honors your competition?
So, Mike, it's funny. My wife is high and competitive as well.
Ooh, cool.
So family game night doesn't go over very well. And I remember when we were first dating, my wife is a swimmer. She was an all-state water polo player, very competitive. I mean, she was, and now she does Ironman triathlons. I mean, she has more of a competitive theme than I do. And I remember when we were first dating, we got into a pool, and I'm not a swimmer, but I'm a competitive person. So it says, hey, look, let's race. And I remember. And she reminds me of this all the time. She destroyed me. I mean, the first 5 meters, she destroyed me. And so I automatically say, my calves have tightened up. I quit. I stopped. And because I knew that this was not going to go over well. And so she, she's an amazing partner because she understands that competitiveness with me as well. And we compete, but we also are aware that when something's going into a competition and it's not going to be pretty, the ending, we avoid it. And so if there's something that we find ourselves competing on, it's difficult. I remember that when she was doing some of her Ironman triathlon training, I would go out and I'm a pretty strong cyclist, and I would go out and cycle with her, and we would start to compete, and we had to stop, and because it was putting kind of a wedge there. So I think from a partner perspective, we have to know where our boundaries are, but that's somebody that has a competitive theme that I'm a lifelong partner with. Others that I've partnered with that don't have that competitive theme, I've tried to help them understand what my competitive theme is so that they are aware that they don't take things personal or things of that nature. And so some of those individuals, and so when I was in the operations world of healthcare, oftentimes my partner was a nurse. And so, they have a totally different theme structure than I do. Here I am, more of a competitive minded. We want to be the best in the industry. This is who we are. And she's more compassionate and she wants to take care of people. And those individuals that I've been able to pair well with from that nursing perspective were ones that I think we both understood each other, and we valued one another's themes, and we were able to see joy in both of those. And I was able to even get some of those nurses to get a little bit more competitive. So it was, I think just understanding one another's theme structure helps a ton.
I think we could write a whole book on partnership, understand, value, and see joy. That was really beautiful. Great. Hey, Jim, what else do we have for Eric? Anything else from the chat room?
I think we've done a good job of kind of keeping up. I love this question of a best partner for you. Well, you talked about, your best partner with your wife. You guys share it. When you come across and just go back, you think about your healthcare folks and where their value structure is different, or their themes may be lined up a little bit different. When you think about some themes specifically that pair well with you, so you've worked with people where they got, what are those other themes or those qualities that really pair nicely with you and that you take the most advantage of in your team settings?
Woo is one. Woo is one that I love because it's winning. Winning others.
That's right.
It is a winning theme. Let's just remind everybody it's a winning theme. They're
winning, right? Positivity is one that works well in that also, and it's part of my makeup also. But I think I look, especially what I've been doing recently is that belief, because I think that belief can really tie in the trust that you need from a competition standpoint. Is having a partner that can really lay out that value and belief structure that you want in a competition, so that competition can also get dirty if you don't have that belief and value structure as well. So I think those are good. That belief really, it just brings that you want to compete, but you want to do it for the right reasons, and you want to be able to say at the end of the day that I not only competed, but I did it the right way, and not in business there's a lot of people that compete and do it for the wrong way and the wrong reasons. And so when you couple those two together, and I think that's why I've had such great relationship with a lot of my clinical partners, is because a majority of them have that strong belief structure, and we've been able to do that together and compete, but do it in a way that is value-based.
Okay, so that's the positive side, and you have positivity. This may be a hard one for you. What about the opposite of that? When you're partnered with another set of themes, where do you struggle with that, or where do you find conflict, or where you decide this isn't going to be a great partnership? That's
a great question, Jim.
Yeah, that's from SP, by the way.
Yeah, let me also jump in. It might not be themes, because that probably would lead to a little bit of theme hate. Are there habits or structures that go wrong for partnerships with your competition?
Sure there are. What those look like are, I think that honestly, it's probably other people that have that competitive nature, that always have to be number one as well, and maybe have that conflict of where maybe we're competing for the same thing, and kind of the one-upper type mentality where I'm always better than you, and well, if you do this, I can do this, and I can do it better, and so I struggle with that. I think, and I know that I have displayed that as well at times, and that's part of that self-awareness of not being that individual as well. So I think it at times are those individuals that probably share the same theme with me, that I struggle with. I hope that made sense.
I want to steal what somebody in the chat room earlier said. It sounds like the mature side of it is when you're competing against someone's performance versus the immature or raw side of where you're competing against the person themselves.
Yeah. That's a lot more eloquent than how I explained it.
It wasn't me. Credit goes to somebody. I don't even remember who it was, but it was good.
I think Harry said that out there. So I think, and two, what you're saying is this one-upness and sometimes it's not. And I this is where I think your belief gets in the way. Is sometimes that's competition for competition's sake, and I think a lot of times you're running it to get something done. So it's like, hey guys, we're competing for a better cause or a better reason, or because we have these values. And sometimes I think that competition, when it's just pure competition to win, that becomes a series of one-upness. So, you got three, I got five. And then it's like, I got
absolutely
7. You got 7, I got 10. And then it's like, for what? Like, so what does that matter? Like, and so I can see how sometimes that could be a struggle when it's just sheer. And yet there are times from where we need some of that. We need that to push and push and push and push. And where it does become hey, you can do 1 million, I can do 2. And sometimes that pushes us out of our comfort zone, right? When it's a pure sales effort or when it's a, whatever. If you can do that, I can do it faster. And lots of times in the military, we were pitted against other teams to see who could do it faster. And trust me, when you think you can do it fast and then you go in a competition against somebody else, you could always do it faster.
Always.
You think you can, right? And so those things are valuable too. But I do see in that situation, your positivity and your belief may really struggle with that constant, just raise it, from that standpoint. So Micah, we are out of time. Can you wrap it for us?
Eric, there are people right now in the chat room competing to work for you, despite their their varying experience in real estate. So I think all of your top 5 and all of your talents have certainly shown through. But thanks for teaching us about competition and being a great poster child for the leadership quality. I feel like I walk away with understanding that competition's about this intense clarity, about vision, about noticing things that other people don't, and about perseverance toward that vision. And that, gosh, I can't think of any other great way to describe a leader. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a privilege to be with you. It sure has. Thank you,
Eric. It's been great having you as well. Thanks. Hang tight for just a second. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. You can send us your questions or comments. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, we have some spots for those as well. We're looking for 400 to 600 words of some ideas that you might have. We can't take them all, but if you got some ideas, send those in, coaching@gallup.com. Put guest blogger in the subject line. That'll come to Micah and I, and Micah will be the one that reviews those. We'd love to have you at least consider you for something like that. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, plus all the past ones. We got a ton out there for you. We're in season 3, so we have 2 seasons of these, Theme Thursday, that hopefully you've watched. If you haven't, go back and watch them, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, we mentioned that a couple times here. You can see a list of all our courses that lead to that on our courses site, courses.gallup.com, or you can send us an email, certification@gallup.com, if you're interested. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you share it. I want to thank you for coming out. These are always awesome. I always learn a ton. Hopefully you are too. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.